There's some frugal advice that you maybe should not be following, and some of it comes from the experts.
In case you don't know us, I'm Larry.
And I'm Hope.
And we're from Under the Median, where every week we bring you videos on practical frugality.
The world of frugality is filled with well-meaning recommendations, but they may not necessarily work for all people. Be sure to listen to the end of this video. We have several examples to share with you of often offered advice, and we'll tell you how to evaluate how really effective this advice is for you and your family. And then at the end of the video, chime in with what you think we missed.
Well, let's take our first one, Hope, and that is shop at several grocery stores. Now, that sounds good on the surface, but how far apart are the stores in your area? Is this causing you to do a lot of extra driving? And if it is, you could be eating up all of your savings in gas.
Eating up, was it? It was like a pun. I loved it. All right, especially when it comes to food. That was funny. We happen to be really fortunate because there are 5 major grocery stores that all lie within a 3-mile radius of our home, which means that we can start from our home, work our way out to the farthest line grocery store, loop our way back, and we've literally spent 6 miles worth of gasoline. But that may not be the case for you, and you have to really do the math and determine, is it worth it for me to drive another 8 or even 10 miles to get to that second grocery store?
You may be exposing yourself to a whole lot of what I would call grocery store advertising. That would be in-store advertising. As you walk through the aisles, you'll see leader items on the end caps. These are positioned to draw you in. So if you're spending an awful lot of time in these stores, you might be drawn to buying some things that weren't on your list. So make sure that you go with a get in, get out plan in order to just get what you have on your list.
A great example of this whole idea of cross-selling is, let's say avocados are on sale for a really great price. The grocery store is going to put those prominently displayed next to, say, tomatoes and maybe some cilantro and maybe some peppers that none of the other items are on sale, but they position them next to it because they are letting you know in your mind, oh, it looks like I need to make some salsa to go with my avocado. And they will sell you these other items because you saw them, because you walked in the store, saw them, and didn't have this get in, get out attitude that Larry just talked about.
Another item on our list is buying in bulk. Now that sounds good on the surface. Generally speaking, you can save a lot of money if you purchase items in large quantities, but that's not always the case. You want to make sure that you have a calculator handy. Most of our phones today have built-in calculators. Do the math before you make the expenditure. And then also you might want to consider, are you going to be able to use all this item up before it goes bad? You might want to go in with some other people, other frugal people that you know, and split this up maybe in thirds.
Finally, unless you've bought that item in the past, you're buying a whole lot of one item you've never tried, you might wind up absolutely hating it. And then you're stuck with a whole lot of something that your family is really, truly not going to eat.
And Hope is definitely not going to waste anything, even if we don't love it to death. So make sure before you commit yourself to a large purchase, you're going to want to eat that.
Or you have a spouse like me who is going to reinvent that item 5 different ways to see if I can actually sell it to my family and convince them they really do like that item they don't think they like. The next thing you might be doing is buying the limit. That may be good advice. It might not be, because the question is, especially if it's something that's perishable, you might be buying the limit, and unless you have a plan for how you're going to preserve those items for later use, you're going to freeze them, dehydrate them, what are you going to do with them? Then you wind up with them getting brown, slimy, limp, and going bad, and you're throwing them out, wasting perfectly good money.
This next piece of advice has nothing at all to do with groceries, and that is drain your savings.
Something happens, it's a major emergency. Some experts will tell you, take your savings, throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at that emergency in order to deal with the emergency. Here's the problem with that piece of advice. If you have thrown everything you have toward taking care of that one need, then you're down to nothing. And if something else happens, then you're in really big trouble with no cushion in order to pay for that. Larry and I actually had a rule that kind of helped deal with this whole situation. We had what we called our 75% rule, and that meant anything that happened, if it it was going to drain more than 75% of our emergency fund, we really gave that a second look and decided, is there another way that we can build some cash up to take care of this need? Is this a need that has to be taken care of right now? Can we sort of put it off for a few weeks in order to give ourselves a little bit of a bumper in order to accrue some cash that will help meet that need? But we never spent more than 75% of what we had available on any one emergency.
Shop thrift stores regularly. We've actually mentioned this quite a few times on our previous videos, but that isn't necessarily good advice if you're shopping for something that you don't need. When you go to a thrift store, it isn't like you take a list with you, is it? Because it's a little hard to find specific items at a used place. So you go and you see what's there and you kind of determine if you like it or not. Oftentimes you might end up purchasing something on impulse rather than something that you were planning on buying. So shopping at thrift stores may or may not be the best way to go.
We actually came up with this rule in our own life for really good reason.
Yes.
Because 2 of our 4 sons have worked at a local thrift store. And so we would drop them off for work, go in, kind of see what was new, pick them up from work, go back in, see if anything came in the last 8 hours. We discovered in really short order that we were doing what we call nickeling and diming ourselves to death. We were purchasing a whole lot more of items from this specific thrift store. And oftentimes it was stuff that honestly, we didn't need it. We're like, ooh, that looks cool. Let's buy it. And so we sort of started adding all the numbers up and went, we have to stop this habit we have of dropping the boys off at work and then going in and just window shopping, because window shopping is never really window shopping, is it? Let's be honest.
And the other thing about buying used at a thrift store is that you might just be cluttering up your homes with stuff that you're going to end up giving away or throwing out later. So this is something you have to do some planning with.
Now, having said all of that, we are huge fans of thrift store shopping. It's just that when it begins to kind of take over too much of your weekly schedule, you can wind up buying a whole lot of stuff without a purpose for that. However, we have shopped thrift stores for many, many years, and this includes all areas of secondhand shopping. So we're talking garage sales, estate sales, even looking through eBay or Facebook Marketplace, any place that you buy things that are not brand new to you. All of those areas can wind up costing you more money than you might think. But we do think, for the record, that there is a time and a place for secondhand shopping, and it can be super helpful for getting some items that you actually do need at a price you're willing to pay.
We'd love to hear you weigh in on this subject. Have you ever gone to thrift stores and bought things that you didn't need? What is your experience, and how do you regulate what you spend there?
Now, if you're new to thrift store or secondhand shop and you're like, clueless, how do I do this? What do I look for? We did a video on it. It's been quite a while back. A couple of years ago, we did a video. We gave you our top 10 tips for thrift store shopping. We'll make sure that's linked up above and in the description of this video.
And if you're enjoying this video, hit the like button. We love to see our viewers responding to what we do. And also, if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing if you like the content.
Here's another frugal idea that I've actually seen touted on some other frugal channels, and that is just stop spending money completely. Like any amount of money that you need to spend above subsistence level living, just stop doing it. The problem with this little bit of advice, how many of you ladies, all right, I will raise my hand and admit, like I've gone on crash diets where you just literally just basically stop eating. The problem with that is that eventually you need to eat. And then oftentimes when you've gone on these very restrictive, calorically restrictive diets, you wind up like overeating when you actually can eat. And that's what happens when you tell yourself, don't spend any money. Then when you feel like you can spend money, it's like, whoo, we sort of had a form of this going on. I have no idea. I haven't discussed this with Larry, guys. I have no idea whether he's going to say he even remembers this or not. At the end of every year, I always create a document that shows exactly what we've spent in every area of our budget over the last 12 months and how much money we spent, how much money we saved. Consistently for years, we would wind up in January going, we have money again. And we would overspend every single January. And it was because we had restricted ourselves so much during the previous 12 months that we were like people unleashed to go spend money and feel good about it, because we'd like, well, we need to celebrate the fact that we saved money by going and doing what? Spending more money. And it was definitely, I think, a form of that.
It's kind of like you're rebounding off of all those restrictions. So we don't recommend you just stop altogether any extra spending. We would recommend that you regulate it and kind of control it.
We have to remember that frugality at its heart is not about deprivation. And we've talked about that before too on the channel. It's simply about choosing when, where, and how you're going to spend your money. And that does not mean ever like not spending any additional money.
Yeah, and the other additional problem with this not spending any money is it really isn't sustainable. I mean, we just can't do that. We're not geared that way. So in the same way with diets, you're better off just eating a really good, healthy diet and staying with that, and don't worry about trying to lose a whole bunch of weight at first. Same with frugal living. Don't worry about trying to save a whole bunch of money or rush into getting rid of all of your debt. Take your time with it, slow it down, and then you'll be able to sustain it. Let's move along to clipping coupons. Now, Hope and I have kind of an ongoing disagreement about coupons. I personally have no patience for the kind of coupons that you would clip out of the old Sunday newspapers. I mean, the ones that kind of save you a nickel and a dime on an item. I just don't think they're worth the time and effort that you have to go into in order to organize the coupon and keep track of all of them, and even keep track of the expiration dates, and then try to find that item at the store. I think it's a big waste of time. I remember going to the stores and just waiting and waiting and waiting on Hope while she went through this little file folder box of 150 different coupons to try to find that 50 cents off, oh boy, on an item. So that's where I stand with clipping coupons.
We always say we have a love-hate relationship when it comes to coupons. I love them. Larry hates them. That's the love-hate relationship going on there. Okay, I am willing to admit that in this day and age, there are such easy ways to clip coupons. I am a huge fan of digital coupons. They're so easy to use. Here's where I fall off the train track, guys. If you are clipping coupons and you're doing it for the sake of saving that 50 cents, but it's on an item that's already processed, it's already overpriced, it's just too much, you would never buy it anyway, except for the fact that you have this little digital coupon that you just clipped in order to buy it. If you're buying things you don't want or need or you wouldn't use on a regular basis, that's when I think coupons can become something where you're just wasting your money.
We're often tempted to just buy an item because it's on sale. Oh boy, it's on sale. I mean, it might even be a really good, tempting sale. But is that always a good idea?
Is it something that you had already planned on buying? Is it something that truly is on sale? And here's where the advantage comes in of actually doing product research on items that you're thinking down the road, 6 months, 12 months, even 24 months. We do product research real early. Because then if we find that product, we know whether that is actually a sale price or not. Because oftentimes what happens is that store will say, here's the regular price. And if you've done your research, you're going to know that that regular price they just quoted is highly overinflated, and their sale price is actually maybe the regular price minus 10% or something like that. And they're saying it's 65% off. Well, yeah, not really. If it's an item you've done the research on and it's an actual sale price, then if you're ready to buy and you've got cash in hand, we think it's a great idea. But the problem is we see so many of these things and we're like on our phones at the store going, is that a good price? And trying to make a decision within about 5 minutes.
And the other thing you have to consider with this type of a purchase is it an impulse buy? Are you all of a sudden seeing an item and making a decision right then and there on it without having really thought about it? Keep in mind that items that go on sale at the stores will go on sale again. This isn't the last time you're ever going to see it on sale. Stores are very competitive with each other and they want to bring you in. And that's the whole idea of putting their items of purchase on sale.
There's a huge trend in the frugality movement of DIY, and we're actually fans of DIYing if and when you can. So DIYing is do it yourself, repair it yourself, take care of whatever needs to be taken care of, but do it yourself. However, there are some just definite flaws in this whole idea of DIYing. If you are trying to DIY something that you're really not qualified to DIY, then that can be a huge problem. It can wind up actually costing you a lot more later to fix the problems that you created inadvertently with your DIY process. Having said that, I think it's a great idea to look on YouTube or wherever you're going to look to try to figure out, is there a way I can take care of this myself? And you're pretty confident doing, then you should do it. But this whole idea of you should always DIY, yeah, we're not real sure about that. You got to know when to call in the experts.
I always like to consult with somebody who works in the field. Let's take our furnace, for instance. I do not try to repair the furnace. It's a very complicated piece of equipment. It's very important in the house. Without it, we're kind of sunk. So I just don't feel the need to go in there and start fiddling with things and experimenting. But I'm willing to call up some people that I know, personal friends that are maintenance, people that know how to service a furnace, and ask them what their opinion is. Then go and have somebody hired out to come over and look at it. That way I have an idea of here's what we think is wrong with it, and then I can get a little handle from them if they're being honest or not.
Here's the other place that we kind of fall off the frugality track. I think as frugal people, we tend to call our friends and say, hey, what do you know about this? If your friend comes over and helps you fix your problem, pay them.
Yeah.
Offer to pay them. If they're a really close friend, sometimes they're going to say no, or, have your wife bake me some, homemade bread or whatever. And then that's okay. But you do not want to jeopardize your relationship with your friends by consistently being that guy who calls them and says, can you help me fix this? And then you don't offer to pay them for their time. Pay them. It's worth it.
It is.
The next piece of advice, and this sort of came to my mind when you were talking about furnaces, there's advice that is given in the frugality community that says it's okay to skip maintenance. That is just kind of a waste of time to sign a maintenance contract for major things in your home. And we think that can be really bad advice.
There are some things that don't require a lot of maintenance, and I'm not one that signs up for these extended warranties. Generally speaking, things that you're buying at the store for maybe $150 to $300, you really don't need a warranty extended for those. I think those are a waste of money, and they're making a lot of money off of those, or they wouldn't offer them. When it comes to regular maintenance on things that require that, it's a good thing to keep up with it. That will save you money in the long run.
Now, when it comes to implementing all this frugality advice into your life in a way that really works for you, that can be a little bit overwhelming and more than a little confusing. So we did a video all about how to implement frugality into your everyday life. We gave you an example of 35 different things that we did in 1 week, frugal things that actually saved us money. It's practical frugality advice. You're going to find that video right over there. If you haven't watched it, give it a watch. We had what we called our 75% off rule. 75%.
We don't buy anything unless it's
75%
75% off. That's why I drive only a quarter of a car.